C10 talk and the Audi. Got an oil filter housing to change, oil to change, some service to do, got new shoes going on. Good thing I got my C10 talk to keep me sane. Thank you, Ronnie. Hey guys, Steve here with Tony's, working on this 2008 Audi A4. It's got an oil leak that appears to be coming from the oil filter housing. This is to give you an update of what it took to get to this point. I've taken off the overflow tank, which was here, which gives nice access in. I did drain the oil filter housing. There's a special hose that goes into a one-way valve that's on the bottom of that housing. Took the charge pipe out of the way. I've got these couple of coolant pipes. They usually say you have to take the intake off, from what I've read, but I've got all 4 bolts that are holding that housing off at this point, and it seems to be okay. There's an air hose that needs to come off the top yet, just to give you some reference. Here's what we're dealing with. So there's an air hose that has to come off yet. There's a sensor on the side here, and then I just took these 4 bolts out, which actually I might have to put maybe 2 of those back in so I can take this hose off, because this is a squeeze and pull, and if I don't have it attached when I get my hand in there and try to squeeze that, I may end up with some issues. Here's the oil cooler. There's coolant in this, so when you open it, it dumps out all over the place. I did open the petcock on the bottom of the radiator to draw down as much as I could to start, so I had less coming out of just the block. The petcock drained the radiator, plus it drained the reservoir, so I could take that out and clean it up. And like I said, this hose right here, if you can see it, let's see here. That hose right there, the corrugated one, is the one that goes to the top of that housing. And then there is a, if I can get in there, there's a sensor right there. I assume oil pressure sensor that has to come out. I'll just see if I can take that sensor off after I put a couple of the long Phillips 5 screws back in. They do take a Phillips 5 on the inside, and then they have hex on the outside. Everything else has been primarily Allen, but other stuff has been, there's been some stuff that's been the 6-point. It took a little bit of the 6-point to get to this point. There is a heater hose that runs through here, right here, that helps. There's a bracket that was on that. It's right here. This bracket bolts through there for some of the wiring harness to attach to, and some miscellaneous stuff. That was hex. One of them I had to cut a slot into it and take it out with a Phillips, because somebody had tried, or a slotted screwdriver, because somebody had tried to use probably a hex or a Torx and just stripped it completely out. So again, with this oil filter housing, it is water and oil combined to take that off the side of the block, and so that's why basically you lose everything. This is due for an oil change, so it's convenient. And you know, the coolant I'll just lose. This, if you have a 2-liter, this is my public service announcement. If you have a 2-liter that is 100,000+ miles, and you're looking at doing any kind of service work, recommendations by me, in addition to the timing belt, which has been done on this car, this also has that hydraulic tensioner setup. Like so many of the Audis and Volkswagens do. The 4.2 has it in there too. It uses hydraulic pressure to change the timing on the intake cam, exhaust cam, intake cam. Anyhow, it changes the timing on the cams. That's kind of a service issue along with the chain. There is, oh, and then this is a direct injection engine, and it's turbo, which means it's kind of runs slime through here, because everybody does it, but the Europeans do it probably better. They love to run crankcase vapors through And I guess when you have a vehicle that's used to cruising on the Autobahn, it's probably not an issue because it's hot all the time. It warms up. Over here, we love to drive short distances and not warm up our vehicles. And so the intercoolers fill up with oil vapor. The charge pipe gets oil vapor in it, which then goes through the throttle body and goes to the backside of the intake valves. I've had this intake off when I did all the other service work on it when we first got it, and scraped. And you can look up videos on YouTube for that. Solvent, scrape, vacuum, while they're closed so you don't get junk going into the cylinders and scoring the walls. And you just clean and pick and scrape the backside of those valves to get them clean. That's a good thing to do, whether you do it or have somebody, service department, do it for you. Shortly after that happened, there is a plastic fitting on the back of the block that I probably won't be able to show you, that when this car was 3.5 hours away from me, broke completely off the back of the block and dumped all the coolant out. Thankfully, it was on a short commute, the one that puts all the oil in the intercoolers. And so it got parked and I trailered it home, ordered that part. If you have any of this off, especially if you're going to do the intake, replace that plastic coolant pipe on the back of the block, because it seems to me it's not a matter of if it breaks, it's when it's going to break, and it's in an awful location. You can change it just by undoing. I think I had to take the vacuum pump off. This has a vacuum pump because it is a turbo car, for the brakes and accessories. I had to take that off and just cram my hand down in behind to get to that fitting, which is way down in the bottom. Replace that. Another warning is there's a piece of hose on that fitting that is two different sizes. It's one size going in, one size going out. And I could not get that free for anything. So I would recommend, if you're going to order the fitting on the back of the block, order that hose also, because I had to cut mine and then I had to use some non-German engineering to get it back together, just because, you know, we're out here in North Dakota. Yes, there are Audis and Volkswagens driving up and down the road all over the place, but you can't go to the parts store and just get a fitting like that. And I really wasn't going to pay $80 for a 3-inch piece of hose from Audi. So I've kind of zip tied some of these wires and stuff out of the way. It is possible to get it all this. Of course, I don't have it off yet. I may run into a big snag there, but I'll let you know what I find out. So I'm going to put 2 bolts in, take that hose off, undo that electrical connector on that oil sensor, and pull that out of there and see what kind of mess I can make with that. And I'll let you know how that goes. I had to take the filter off to get enough wiggle room to get it by all the coolant brackets that go by there. But once I worked it a little bit, like I said, with the filter off, so I'll have to take the filter off the new one too. It kind of fell out, but it came out of there all right. So everything's out. I did bust up that connector a little bit, but it's still got enough clips to hold it. It's a breather for pulling vapors out, crankcase, and yeah. So there it's out. There's the new one. I'll get that one ready to go once I clean off the block and make sure everything's all good and nice, and look up some torque specs and, you know, do all the necessary homework. But yeah, well, I guess it looks like we're heading back together. We've got snow on the ground, so it will not be going outside for a pressure wash. It'll have to wait till next time it's here visiting for me to you know, detail under here and blow some of that oil off. But hopefully this will take care of the bulk of it. I know it's hard on some of these cars to catch all of the oil leaks, cam seals, you know, front seals, rear seals. You know, there's lots of stuff that can get messed up, but it appeared that this was kind of the main culprit. And on the forums, this is done a lot. ECS Tuning supplied the new one. They're nice because they have multiple levels depending on what you want to spend. This is a college kid car, so I was able to get the $90, $100 option versus the $250 to $300 option. So it'll be good, and we'll get our slap pack together, and I'll let you know how it goes. Well, hopefully the battle is won. It's all back together and filled up. What I'll do in some following videos is show I used my vacuum filler to fill this up. Fills it right up to where it needs to be. I did have an issue with using a different cap for it that was made for pressure, not suction. That was making me feel like it was leaking, so I ended up taking it all apart again and putting it all back together, which now takes probably about 10 minutes. Tank off, hose off. There's a screw in there has to come off, a screw there has to come off. Yeah, get this out of the way. 4 bolts on the cooler, plus a hose. The cooler comes off. 4 bolts, air hose, and a sensor on the oil side, and that all comes off. Makes a mess. It would make a mess now if I did it again because I have coolant and I have oil in it. I'm gonna get the wheels on probably tomorrow and kick her out the door. So thanks for watching. Talk to you later.